Greetings, whisky folk, and welcome to the official Dram Association unbottling of Busker Irish Whiskey Single Grain here on Drinking Out Loud. So, why are we opening this Busker Irish Whiskey? Well, if you hadn't noticed, at the time of release, it is mere days away from St Patrick's Day, and I figured a little bit of an Irish theme to the next couple of episodes was fitting, especially as the next couple of episodes are the unbottlings for this month's Dram Association drop-in-dram. So this is our free one. Any Dram Association member, which of course is free to join and anyone can join at any time, can come and try this whiskey for free in the Strathliquor store for the next month. Very, very excited to share this one because I really liked this whiskey before I knew the full story, and the full story is kind of cool. It's really awesome. So, first of all, Busker has 4 whiskies available right now across British Columbia. They have a single grain, a single malt, a single pot still, and a blended Irish whiskey. To the best of my knowledge, they're the only company that actually has all different varieties of Irish whiskey, which is super cool. And it's even cooler, the fact that they actually distill them all as well. This is not sourced whiskey, which is something that I just kind of assumed it was before really looking into it, because most Irish whiskey kind of is. And they didn't branding-wise, they didn't seem to make such a big deal about what distillery it's from. I don't think it even says, really. It does, but it's kind of on this weird stamp on the side. It doesn't even say on the front. It says here, Royal Oak Distillery, proudly handcrafted in Royal Oak Distillery. And then the same thing in French, which is kind of nice of them. They must have changed the design specifically for the market here, which is kind of cool. Yeah, so Busker, you heard of them? Well, you've probably heard of some of the key players as to how they got here. So one of the Irish whiskey brands that we've really enjoyed recently in the last few years here at the Dram Association is Walsh whiskey, right? They make Writer's Tears, they make the Irishman, and we've had some wonderful ones. We've had the Writer's Tears Cast Strength, we've had the Redhead, we've had multiple different Irishmen throughout the time as well. Yeah, really, really great whiskey makers. And weirdly, this is very heavily tied to them. And it's kind of a bit of a sad story for the guys at Walsh in a sense. So, Royal Oak Distillery used to be called Walsh Distillery, and it was set up to be able to make those brands of whiskey in the future, is what I understand at least. So, Writer's Tears and Irishman are sourced whiskies; they're not made. I assume most of it probably comes from New Middleton, which is like the big boy over in Ireland. It's the company that makes the vast majority of the whiskies, especially grain whiskey. So yeah, it's a bit sad because they had a bit of a split. So back in 2016, it was founded. The Walsh Distillery sort of has set their stills up for the first time and started running spirit. And unfortunately, in 2019, Bernard Walsh and I always remember Bernard's name, but there was Bernard's partner, I'm not sure business or personal, but there was another Walsh involved as well. I always feel bad that I can never remember their name. But they sort of split off from the parent company. The parent company being Ilva Serono, the makers of Disaronno. And this is actually specifically made by Disaronno, apparently, to pair with Disaronno. They wanted to make a whiskey for their signature Disaronno cocktail, which I'd never heard of, the Goodfather, which I assume is sort of playing on the whole mafia tie between Italy and Ireland, which is kind of cool, actually. It's a great name for a cocktail. I'm surprised I've not come across it. So yeah, wild history. So in 2019, they had the split, and the name was changed from Walsh Distillery to Royal Oak Distillery. And in 2020, they released their first suite of whiskies. What a year to release a suite of whiskies, right? Finally, last year, we got to see them here. I got little samples to see if I would like to pre-order them, and I did. I really enjoyed my little samples, so I'm really looking forward to revisiting it again now in a proper full-size bottle. We're not going to get that satisfying cork pop on that we all know and love on this show, for it is a screw top, but let's see if we can get a nice satisfying screw top crack, shall we? Alright, let's see. I always feel like I'm wringing someone's neck when I do that. It sounds horrifying. Yep. Let's pour a wee dram. Very nice. I'll pour a little more because I I have plans for this, as you'll see soon. But first of all, let's, of course, read the bottle, see what we're dealing with. So it is single grain. As I said, they make 4. This is the single grain version. It says on the side, one of our 3 traditional Irish whiskies. I don't know which one they're counting as not traditional, because they make 4, so it's kind of funny. 88.6 proof, so 44.3% alcohol. Yeah, product of Ireland. On the back, oh yeah, there's a nice little blurb here. Meet the Busker. Its roots run deep at Royal Oak Distillery, the home of Irish whiskey culture. That's a bold statement. Where all types of traditional whiskies, grain, malt, and pot are made under one roof. And blended. They blend them as well. Come on now. Don't ignore the blended whiskey. It's very mean of you. The secret to our single grain is in choosing the highest quality spirits and combining them with our hand-selected casks. Take a journey with the Busker single grain as we start off with sweet caramel and soft vanilla, combined with delicious oak notes. And, you know, I know this is very unprofessional of me. I'm going to have to Google something right now because I forgot to make a note of something. I did find out what casks they use in the Busker single grain, and I've forgotten. So give me 1 sec. Freeze frame. And we're back. So, thanks to a quick bit of Google foo, and actually the official the official website told me most of this information, and a quick shout out to Difford's Guide as well. The cask is really interesting because it's actually Marsala casks, and even more so, interestingly, the creators of the Marsala is Canteen Florio, who actually are owned by the same company, Elvis Rono. So it's kind of cool. So they've got obviously really good access to really good quality casks. So yeah, I'm gonna have a bit of a nose, see if I can find any of that. Oh, it's so clean and bright. I love grain whiskey. It's a shame it doesn't get the same sort of attention that other styles of whiskey get. Irish grain and Scottish grain, like just the same kind of idea, right? It always gets put in the shadow of its bigger brother, or older brother, I guess, or sister, the single malt and the pot still whiskies. Yeah, nice rich caramel. Yeah, caramel and vanilla is exactly what the bottle suggests, and you know they're always very solid things to say in any whiskey because they should theoretically kind of both be there. It comes from the American oak. So yeah, there's American oak in this as well. It's not just Marsala casks, I should mention. All right, slash there. Ooh, that's very pleasant. Approachable, soft, reminds me of almost like a wheated bourbon in a sense. There's not as much aggression from the cask. It's more delicate, but you've got that soft wheatedness. And it is actually a wheat whiskey. I should have mentioned that as well. The grain that they use at Royal Oak is wheat for their single grain, and I believe a bit of malted barley as well. Yeah, it's really soft, buttery pancakes. A bright, vibrant, sort of almost like a gooseberry kind of an acidity to it as well. So the original distiller, as I mentioned, was Bernard Walsh. In, I think it was 2020 or 2021, Carolyn Martin took over as the new distiller. I think she's still with them. Oh, it's remarkably pleasant. It's been a while since I tried this. As I said, I got the little sample bottles in the mail, see if I wanted to bring them into the store. I liked it enough to bring it into the store, obviously. So, you know, that's that's a good marker. I like it now as well. I'm really glad to be sharing this one with you. So, why am I pinpointing specifically the single grain instead of the single malt, which is the other one that we have in right now? Well, it's because I think it's a bit of an interesting story. Like, if you were going to make a film about Irish whiskey, a film, as the Irish would pronounce it, of Irish whiskey, I think you'd have to make it about Anais Coffey. Because he's got such the redemption arc, such the interesting story. So for those who aren't familiar, Anais Coffey was the inventor of the Coffey still, patented in 1830, and it really changed the landscape of whiskey as we know it, and it's still used today by various distillers. it wasn't a pot still. It was heathenry at the time in the world of whiskey, and it could make whiskey out of other spirits as well. It was a column still. It used iron instead of all copper. It still had copper, but it used copper in rectifying place instead of the actual body of the still. It was, yeah. I mean, the Irish are often thought of as a superstitious peoples, and they thought there was something very wrong with this Aeneas coffee invention, and they shunned it, and they said it's not real whiskey if it's made with this still. And that is kind of weirdly responsible for the downfall of Irish whiskey, I would say. So Scottish whiskey embraced it, opened it with wide open arms, and because of that, we started getting huge volume, consistent blends like Johnny Walker Red Label, famous Grouse, Ballantines, Bells, Teachers. All of these blends started to pop up and then be exported in bulk around the world. And the whole world stood up, took notice, and Scotch whiskey became the more prominent whiskey, whereas Irish whiskey was actually more prominent before. And here's a fast fact for you. Did you know that's the reason for the spelling in America? You might have noticed Americans like to spell whiskey with an E, which is the traditional Irish way. Although some distilleries these days are dropping the E in Ireland, which is kind of interesting. This one's keeping the E. And that's because when America was really forming as a nation, Irish whiskey was the more prominent. It was the more well-established. It was the most well-thought-of style of whiskey. So they took on that spelling. Whereas later on, when Canada and Australia and other English-speaking countries started popping up as their own nation, it was Scottish whiskey that was the most popular. So they took the non-E variety of the spelling, which is kind of interesting. So why did I say bit of a redemption arc? Because that's kind of a bit of a sad thing. Aeneas Coffee kind of put the almost the nail in the coffin of Irish whiskey. Ireland only had, I think, 3 distilleries come the year 2000. They almost all closed down. It was a huge sort of. It was really sad. It was it was a huge decline in both variety and almost a little bit in quality in some ways as well because of that, because it didn't have the prominence. But pretty much one whiskey revived it. Probably the most well-known Irish whiskey of all, Jameson. And how did it revive it? By using grain whiskey. Yes, it was Middleton's grain whiskey being pumped out in mass volume, and they managed to make a good quality, consistent product at a low price and market it around the world. That is kind of what saved Irish whiskey. I do believe that, I believe that to be the case. I mean, nothing against the other distilleries that continued. As much as I think Jameson is the most well-known, I think Bushmills during that period was probably the most well thought of. I mean, and the third was kind of quiet at the time. They're doing more these days, but Tyrconnell is, it's always been there, but it's kind of a bit of a smaller player. Bushmills brought the quality and brought the so people had a positive connotation with that. Jameson brought out the big marketing and the available everywhere, and that really is what saved Irish whiskey. And funnily enough, Bushmills, of course, they only make single malts at the old Bushmills distillery, but their most popular, most commonly found whiskies are their blended whiskies, where they actually use grain from New Middleton as well. So it's the grain whiskey at New Middleton that saved Irish whiskey. So I think that's a really interesting sort of story, an interesting redemption arc, and that's why I chose the grain to present in this way, because I wanted to shed a bit of light on that story. I think it's quite wonderful. But I learned some interesting things along the way. I had no idea of the whole Godfather element. And as I said, I'm pouring myself a slightly bigger dram than I would normally, because I have some Disaronno. So I'm gonna pour myself a quick Godfather. 1 second, please. That also wasn't particularly satisfying sounding, was it? So it said 50-50, so I'm just going to eyeball it. I think that looks about right. Although I've left the ice over there. 1 second. And cut. All right, as if by magic, I have been iced, which I'm having flashbacks now. After the Island Craft Festival, I had a couple of drinks with some of the servers that were helping with that festival, and they introduced me to the whole being iced thing, which is where I don't quite understand the rules, but something about if you suddenly see a bottle of Smirnoff Ice, you have to down it. Anyway, I have ice in my drink. I've not been iced. Yeah, and it's reminding me all of a sudden of a lot of classic Scottish cocktails that are just 50-50 ratio of whiskey and something else, like, a rusty nail or a whiskey mac, of course, which is ginger wine. And just as Krabby's, the maker of ginger wine, started making their own whiskey, the Yardhead, specifically to go in a whiskey mac with Krabby's, it's kind of interesting that we've now got Disaronno going with the Busker, which is... I just love that connection. I think it's really interesting. I've never had a Godfather before, so I'm about to be inducted into the mafia. Here we go. Oh, it smells just like Disaronno, which I like Disaronno, but it doesn't smell any different on the nose. Maybe that's what they're going for. Ah, that lovely almond, almost, what's that stuff? Not the icing, the next layer in a Christmas cake. I'll get there, hang on. Why can I not remember? Oh. Marzipan, there we go. Tastes like really good marzipan. That's really refreshing, actually. It cuts the sweetness of the Disaronno without cutting the flavour, if you know what I mean. That does go really well. Like, surprisingly well. Alright. To the Godfather. Stay tuned, the next video is dropping momentarily, and it will be our premium dram for the month of March at the Dram Association. Still sticking to that grain theme, but we may be going Scotch. Sorry, Patrick. We might be releasing a Scotch as well in very close to your special day, but I hope you don't mind. Alright, Slanchavar, see you on the next one. Oh, wait, no, the price. I didn't even tell you the price. Cut myself off. Alright, so before I go, that's one exciting thing about the Busker whiskies. They're priced incredibly well, and that's one of the reasons I didn't really pay much attention to them, and I just thought they were cheap-sourced whiskey. They're not. They're, not sourced. They're not cheap. They are very affordable, though, because I've been told by the marketing department that cheap is a bad word. I'll probably keep using it. Anyway, this is $48.61 at full price, which means with the 10% off that you get because it's currently a featured whiskey, it's about $44. It's really bloody good for $44, I'll tell you that. This definitely gets my stamp of approval, and hopefully it will be a great whiskey for you for St Patrick's Day as well. Slanchavar, see you on the other side.